Good morning, YouTube.
Well, Lagos, here we are. It is gone past 6:30, which means it is time for Business Express right here on Smooth Breakfast. Joining me is Rotus. Good morning.
Good morning, Shokwe. Good morning to all our listeners and YouTube viewers. Good to be with you all again on a very interesting Thursday morning.
Yes, now a lot is happening and we want you to get in on the conversation. So use the hashtag Business Express 981 up on Twitter. You can also go watch the live stream because we are streaming live on youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos. And you can leave your comments up on the live stream as well. And of course, you can send WhatsApp messages in to 0809 440 981. All right, Rotus.
Yes. And of course, today's episode of Business Express is brought to you by Stanbic IBTC. So look, Russia, it's happened. President Vladimir Putin, I talked about yesterday on personal finance. On personal finance, I talked about how Russia can teach individuals about the importance of savings. And essentially, the whole point about teaching people about the importance of savings was the fact that the economic sanctions that have been leveled against Russia may not have that much of an effect. They may not have that much of an effect in terms of the fact that Russia has about $650 billion, no, 635 billion dollars in US dollar reserves that could cushion the country against the sanctions that are being leveled against it. Now, still, there is, of course, an impact on the ruble, the currency of Russia, whereby the ruble could be weakened, which could lead to inflationary pressures for people of Russia and so on and so forth. But as far as building up your reserves, because Russia has 17% of the gas reserves of the world, also a major third largest oil producer after the United States and Saudi Arabia, non-OPEC member. But because it's able to build up its reserves, Russia has been able to essentially shield itself. So this about 5:50 a.m. Russian time, Putin announced that there would be activity, military operations in eastern Ukraine. This is, of course, what's been building up. The United States telegraphed this, the UK, all other nations. Oil prices have now crossed, a few minutes after he announced the military operations going into eastern Ukraine, oil prices crossed $100 a barrel. Haven't seen those prices since 2014, right? So that's what's been going on now. I watched the full United Nations Security Emergency Security Council meeting that was called. In fact, as the council meeting was going on, Putin goes to address the nation and announces the fact that those military operations would proceed in eastern Ukraine. You've seen oil prices now top $100 as I last checked. Now, for us here in Nigeria, this would supposedly be a good thing. But Timi Silva, Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, he not ago was on Bloomberg saying that high oil prices are not good for Nigeria. He didn't really go into specifics, but he says a good point is about the $70, $80 barrel level. Most of the reasons why is because the OPEC cuts have hampered Nigeria's production capacity. If you look at the fourth quarter GDP figures released last week by the Bureau of Statistics, oil production for Nigeria is about 1.5 million barrels per day. So it's fallen to one of its lowest levels since I think about 2016 or so. So we're not able to as much oil as we'd like, which means we can't capitalize on prices that are rising. There's also the issue of subsidies in the fact that higher oil prices mean the landing cost of fuel that's imported, which has an FX cost that dynamic as well. That's also going to impact on revenue. So we're not at a time where I remember years ago, I used to say you should jokingly, tongue in cheek, hope for geopolitical conflicts around the world in that they push up oil prices and that can assist us in our earnings. As of right now, we're not benefiting from that at all. So that's what's been going on. So it's a developing situation. Biden has come out to say that there will be consequences. Ghana was on the United Nations Security Council. A representative from Ghana spoke. Gabon, Kenya.
Kenya as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, it's really, really huge. It's a developing situation. But the thing is, as far as we are concerned, it is, as far as what we're seeing with respect to oil prices and their trajectory, we should be benefiting from it. But you know, it remains to be seen whether or not. I see where we have Ayodeji Daodu from Stanbic IBTC is with us. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. What do you make of what's been happening recently?
Hi, good morning, Rotus. Good morning, everyone. Like you mentioned, it's a bit of a sad situation when you look at potential loss of life and the fact that there's a potential we may be going to war at this moment. When I say we, I mean countries in Europe, Russia and Ukraine to be specific. In terms of commodities, we've been seeing oil prices, as you mentioned, rise on a continuous basis. There was a bit of a blip about 2 weeks ago where I guess oil prices dipped a bit on the potential easing on sanctions on Iran, but it seems that that's the case of the past now, and the tensions in Ukraine have really taken over. As you mentioned, we're now seeing oil prices at triple-digit levels, $100 a barrel, highs we haven't seen in over 8 years, which usually should be a positive for Nigeria, but subsidy, significant increase in consumption, some of which are being diverted to neighboring countries, as well as disruption to production activities, hindering oil revenues as well, mean that these high oil price levels are most likely a negative than a positive for the country.
And there's been talk recently about Nigeria not capitalizing on her gas reserves, mostly because investments in gas are very capital intensive. We've got large gas reserves. Recently, I believe Germany's foreign minister went to visit Egypt. They're saying it was because of diplomatic relations, just to increase, relations between both countries. But under the whispers are that Germany is looking elsewhere for gas imports, trying to divert away from Russia. Olaf Scholz just yesterday or the day before has suspended approval on the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, $11 billion project running from Russia all the way to Germany as a result of this Ukraine tensions. I think, is it Morocco or Algeria? One of the other North African countries are, trying to take advantage of being able to export gas to European nations, because Europe is going to take a hit if they're not able to get gas from Russia, which is their main supplier. Have we missed out, essentially? My question to you is, have we missed out on not having developed proper gas infrastructure over the last decade or so in order to where we could have taken advantage of that situation now?
So you can say that that could have been the case, but there's no time than now. Better late than never, right? So we do have LLNG Train 7 coming on stream, but I believe that's not until 2024. But I mean, the scenario you've painted there is that there is increasing demand for gas globally, given the shift away from oil and the global energy transition towards lower emitting fossil fuels. But also you have to also put into the frame as well that there's also growing demand domestically for gas as well. So there is a twin impact there that you'll start to see going forward. There are projects coming on stream for the domestic economy. There's the annual gas processing plant coming on stream, hopefully the second half of this year, which could increase gas to power as well as access to clean cooking fuels such as LPG as well. If I remember correctly, the plant's about 300 million scoffs per day in terms of capacity. But there is demand, there is huge demand. As you mentioned, Nigeria does have significant gas reserves. I believe it's about the seventh largest in the world. It's a case of having the infrastructure in place to supply both to the domestic economy and to export as well. But as you mentioned earlier, there is growing demand for gas as a result of the shift towards cleaner energy sources. It's just a case of Nigeria just needs to tap into that growing demand.
All right, now we've got
Excellent
messages
stuff.
coming in.
Yes,
Let's
go ahead.
just take a quick couple of messages on WhatsApp. This one in from Toye Odunsi, who says, well, we're not likely to benefit from high oil prices because of the forward sales of our oil in previous years. And going on to say the current leadership seems to have mortgaged our resources. That's Ola in from VGC. While Gilbert has a question. Gilbert saying, despite the windfall of the 1990-1991, when Nigeria sold more oil during the Gulf crisis in the Iraq-Kuwait unrest, what impact did it make to the average Nigerian citizen?
That is a very good question from Gilbert. The issues, in fact, the Federal Executive Council meeting for yesterday was concluded, and the federal government was saying that they're trying to make inroads as far as the economy is concerned, reducing inflation that can be felt by the average Nigerian. Ayodiji, I guess until Nigerians can see tangible impact of government policies. If they don't feel it, it's not happening. Is that basically the translation? If I don't feel it, it didn't happen.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you would want policy implementation to be stronger, right? To be felt by the average individual and by businesses and by employers and the likes. And I think that's what, has probably not been the greatest over the last few years. Policy creation has been accredited, has been said to be great. It's just the implementation hasn't been the strongest. And I guess that's where we have concerns on an act such as the Petroleum Industry Act. On paper, it looks to be progressive. It looks to be in a step in the right direction in terms of modernizing the oil and gas sector. It's just a case of implementation. Will it be fully implemented, and will it be implemented in the quickest amount of time to spur investments into the oil and gas sector and to support, as you mentioned, gas development and production as well.
All right, now, gentlemen, we have about a minute left and we've got messages. So, Rotus,
go ahead.
Yeah, let's do this. Okay, so message in from Lennon, who says Nigeria has signed a strategic agreement with Morocco for gas supply, and this was the strategic objective. So gas to Europe as an alternative to Russia's monopoly, and that's why Nigeria is doing the AKK gas project through Kogi. So he says we're not necessarily late. What do you say?
Yeah, that was years ago, right? I mean, I think we're hearing about Morocco deals. Although I think there was also fertilizer deals. That was during the Goodluck Jonathan administration. I mean, better late than never. But hey, things keep happening that we could have taken advantage of, and we haven't taken advantage of them because these investments and announcements, we're not piping gas, to these other countries in the quantities that can allow us to gain from them. What do you think?
So yeah, I think there is, like I mentioned before, serious demand there. I mean, projects like AKK, again, look great on paper, but funding has been a significant challenge. I mean, that project's been discussed since about, like you said, in the Goodluck Jonathan era, and it still hasn't materialized. There was supposed to have been some funding coming from Asia to support the projects, as well as a few import-export banks, but it appears as though the financing from Asia has been delayed or has even fallen apart. So again, you could mention that difficulties in saving past oil revenues is now coming back to haunt us in terms of developing the oil and gas sector.
Well, that is all we have time for on today's Business Express. Rotus, thank you for taking over the show. And of course, Ayodeji Dawodu, who's an oil and gas and industrials analyst with Stanbic IBTC. Thank you for joining us on today's show. Make sure you go over to Twitter. You can find Rotus at Rotanquote. And Ayodeji, where can we find you?
At Stanbic IBTC, actually.
There you go. There you go. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. And that
you so
is
much.
goodbye for today, Rotus. We'll see you tomorrow for Tech Friday. Hey.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, coming up, it's great music, and we shall see you for 7:30 when we get to have news analysis with our panelists inside of Freshly Pressed. Business Trends.